Hello, in this video we will deal with the first story of Joseph. Let's read from the Torah, Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojourning, in the land of Canaan. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and while he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamt another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowed down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And the man found him wandering in the field. And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him," and threw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that the fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. But then Reuben heard it. He rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And they took him and threw him into a pit. And they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on the way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit it is if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted out of the pit and sold him to Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit. He tore his clothes and returned to his brothers, saying, "The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Now let's read the same story from the Qur'an. Surah 12. We relate to you, O Muhammad, the best of stories. Of these stories mentioned, then Joseph said to his father, "O my father, indeed I have seen in a dream 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." He said, "O my son, do not relate your vision to your brothers, or they will contrive against you a plan. And thus will your Lord choose you and teach you the interpretation of narrative and complete his favor upon you, upon the family of Jacob." When they said, "Joseph and his brother are more beloved to our father than we, while we are a clan, indeed our father is in clear error. Kill Joseph or cast him out to another land. The countenance of your father will then be only for you, and you will be after that a righteous people. Said the speaker among them, Do not kill Joseph, but throw him into the bottom of the well. Some travelers will pick him up, and you would do something. They said, O our father, why do you not entrust us with Joseph, while indeed we are to him sincere counselors? Send him with us tomorrow, that he might eat well and play, and indeed we will be his guardians. Jacob said, Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him, and I fear that the wolf would eat him, while you are of him unaware. They said, If a wolf should eat him, while we are a strong clan, indeed we would be the losers. So when they took him out and agreed to put him into the bottom of the well, but we inspired to him, You will surely inform them some day about this affair of theirs while they do not perceive your identity. And they came to their father at night weeping. They said, O our father, indeed we went racing each other and left Joseph with our possessions, and the wolf ate him. But you would not believe us, even if we were truthful. And they brought upon his sword false blood. Jacob said, Rather, your souls have enticed you to something, so patience is most fitting, and a lie is the one sought for help against that which you describe. And there came a company of travelers. Then we sent their water drawer, and he let down his bucket. He said, Good news, he is a boy. And they concealed him, taking him as merchandise, and Allah was knowing of what they did. And they sold him for a reduced price, a few dirhams. Allow me to examine both stories. 1. The Torah in Genesis chapter 30 tells us that Joseph was born of Rachel, the only woman Jacob truly loved. In chapter 35 we read that Rachel died after giving birth to her second child, Benjamin. The Quran doesn't mention any of these details. 2. In the Torah at the beginning of Genesis chapter 37 we read that Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other sons. We read that his brothers hated Joseph, not only because he was Jacob's favorite son, but also because Joseph was telling his father what his brothers were doing wrong. Again, the author of the Quran mentions none of it. 3. In the Torah, Joseph dreamt two sequential dreams, one about sheaves of grain and another about celestial bodies. The Quran mentions only the second dream. 4. According to the Torah, Joseph told both dreams to his brothers and his father. After his brothers heard the first dream, they interpreted it as Joseph wanting to rule over them, and for that they hated him even more. After Joseph told them his second dream, they became jealous of him. Jacob also rebuked him for suggesting that he, Joseph's mother, who was already dead, and all his brothers would someday bow down before Joseph, meaning that Joseph would be the leader of the entire family. In the Quran, this part of the story is told very differently. 1. Jacob was the only one who was told Joseph's dream. He was happy for him, and he told Joseph that he would be an interpreter of dreams. 2. Jacob warned Joseph not to tell his brothers about this dream, and Joseph obeyed. 3. Therefore the brothers hated Joseph only because Jacob loved him more than them and never heard any of Joseph's dreams. 5. In the Torah, his brothers went to feed their flock at Shechem. After several weeks passed, Jacob sent Joseph to find his brothers and come back with a report of their well-being. That suggests that his brothers would continue to feed the flock in that region for the few more weeks after Joseph would return to Hebron. Joseph finally found his brothers in Dothan, which is about 150 kilometers away from Hebron. As they saw him approach their camp, they spontaneously decided to kill him, not to win the love of their father, but to prove that all the dreams that Joseph told them should never be fulfilled, thus proving Joseph wrong. But Reuben the eldest was able to keep his brothers from murdering him. The author of the Quran tells us that his brothers decided to throw Joseph down a specific well near Jacob's camp close to the caravan route, so that travelers would pick Joseph up and bring him to another country. His brothers believed that Joseph's disappearance would make Jacob start loving them. So they approached Jacob and asked him to send a very young Joseph, at this time he was probably a toddler, to play games with them the next day, suggesting that his brothers were probably teenagers if they had the desire and time to play games all day. However, Even teenagers in those days were pretty occupied with daily routines and heavier labor to help their families survive, unlike our teenagers of today, who waste time playing on their computer or video games. Jacob reluctantly agreed, but suggested that the wolf would eat his toddler, Joseph, if no one would accompany him. So his brothers took Joseph with them the very next day and did to him what they planned. 6. According to the Torah, his brothers sold Joseph to some Midianites Ishmaelites from Gilead on their way to Egypt. This detail proves that Ishmael lived all his life near Canaan on the east side of the Jordan River, not 1350 kilometers southeastern Mecca, Hijaz, and therefore is not any relation to Muhammad. After his brothers received 20 pieces of silver, they immediately went back to Hebron. It would take them no less than 4 or 5 days to travel, or at most a week. Now, let us summarize all possible timelines from when his brothers went from Hebron to Shechem and eventually to Dothan and back. Let's say that they were absent about 3-4 weeks before Jacob decided to send Joseph to check on them. Joseph could have walked 150 kilometers for probably 4 days. He was sold to the Ishmaelites, and the very next day after the transaction his brothers started walking home. So their father didn't see his sons for about 4 to 6 weeks, and Joseph was already absent about 2 weeks. According to the author of the Qur'an, Jacob did not send his very young sons to feed his flock far away, but let them take the toddler Joseph in the morning, and they returned without him the same day, late in the evening. Also, his brothers sold Joseph for a few dirhams. The name dirham comes from the Greek coin drachma. Greek, or more accurately, Byzantine Empire drachmas were in circulation in the Middle East in the pre-Islamic time period and were adopted by the Arabs after Islam came into being. In this case, the author of the Quran made the mistake of attributing drachma as the currency of Joseph's time period, which was almost 2000 years before it really appeared in the Middle East. 7. In the Torah we read that the brothers came to their father and presented Joseph's robe with blood on it, pretending that they never encountered Joseph, and they happened to find this garment on the road back to Hebron. Jacob recognized the robe and presumed that Joseph was killed by a wild beast. He started crying, not only because Joseph was dead, but also because he felt that he had sent Joseph to certain death himself. He mourned for his beloved son many days. The author of the Quran tells us a very different story. According to him, the brothers came back to their father without Joseph in the evening of the same day. They claimed that Joseph had been eaten by the wolf, basically playing along with Jacob's original fear. But Jacob denounced this report, stating that they are lying and Joseph is alive. Now, let us summarize all the differences. We must conclude that apart from the fact that brothers hated Joseph and eventually sold him travelers on their way to Egypt, both books disagree with each other on major and minor details. Interestingly enough, the author of the Quran continually lowers the age of people involved in the story. Joseph is a toddler in this story. Ishmael was an infant during the expulsion of Hagar, and Isaac was not born yet when Abraham supposedly about to bring his son Ishmael as a sacrifice to Allah. The author of the Quran gives a different name to the place where the biblical story occurred. He often changes the names of the people involved and misses out important details. In the next few videos I will continue discussing differences between the Jewish scriptures and the Quran in the story of Joseph. Thank you for watching. See you next time.